"If I open this bag," Evelyn Hart said, "you do not get to call me cursed until the boy has a chance to breathe." No one on the Mercy Junction platform answered her. Only a minute earlier, they had all found plenty to say. They had whispered Granger Bend. They had whispered dead child. They had whispered bad luck nurse as if the words might catch fever if spoken too loudly. The boarding house had refused her. The ticket clerk would not meet her eyes. The man who promised to help her west had already left on the morning train with her money in his pocket. Then Gideon Vale came in from the road with his son burning in his arms, and judgment turned into silence. The rancher stood before her with dust on his coat, his hat shoved back, and his jaw locked so hard it seemed to hurt him. The boy against his chest hung limp, cheeks dark with fever, breath shallow and wrong. Evelyn saw the signs before she meant to. Too much heat behind the ears. Dry lips. A bitter smell on the child's breath, like cheap tonic and fear. She had seen that mistake before. She had begged a doctor to see it before. Nobody had listened then. She looked once toward the tracks, still shining from the train she had missed. If she walked away now, she might finally outrun the story tied to her name. Then the boy stirred and made a sound too small to be a word. Evelyn lowered herself beside him and opened the brass clasp. Gideon Vale did not ask if she was innocent. He asked, "What do you need?" That was the first mercy anyone in Mercy Junction gave Evelyn Hart that morning, and it sounded like a man running out of time. The train was gone beyond the water tower, but the rails still shone in the sun, two bright lines heading west without her. Evelyn had reached town before dawn with one trunk, one nurse's bag, and a promise from a salesman named Mr. Lyle. He claimed he knew a widow in Benton who needed help. By breakfast, Mr. Lyle was gone. So was the money inside her glove. Abel Finch found her by the ticket window. "The westbound does not stop again until Friday," he said. "I can work until then." His eyes dropped to the nurse's bag. The glance told her the rest. Mrs. Bell at the boarding house kept her door half closed. A mother carrying eggs crossed the road and pulled her little girl close. At the station stove, Abel lowered his voice. Dr. Creel sent word. Said he knew the name. Said Granger Bend was not the sort of thing a town ought to forget. Evelyn nodded, because anger required more strength than she had left. Granger Bend. One boy. One fever room. One doctor pouring tonic by the spoonful while Evelyn counted the breaths stretching farther apart. She had said the medicine smelled wrong. She had asked for boiled water, cool cloths, open air, and no more tonic. Doctor. Marlowe had told her to remember her place. By morning, the boy was dead, and Evelyn became the woman people blamed when they needed the doctor left clean. Now another boy lay before her, and the platform waited to see whether she would become the same story twice. Gideon crouched, keeping Samuel's head against his arm. His fear showed only in how gently he held the child. "How long?" Evelyn asked. "Since last night." "Water?" "He would not keep it." "Medicine?" Gideon's eyes shifted toward the town road. "Creel left tonic 2 days ago. Said it was for the chest." A murmur moved behind them. Someone said a real doctor had already seen the boy. Someone else whispered that Gideon Vale ought to know better after what happened to his wife. Evelyn leaned closer. Samuel's breath carried the bitter edge she feared. Not proof. Not yet. But enough to tighten her stomach. "I need boiled water," she said. "Clean cloth. Shade. No more tonic until I see the bottle." The ticket clerk laughed. "She has been here half a morning and already knows better than Dr. Creel." Evelyn shut the bag. The small click cut across the platform. Gideon looked at the clerk. He did not raise his voice. He only stood with Samuel in his arms and said, "My wagon is outside." The clerk stopped smiling. Evelyn should have walked away. Every lesson from the last year told her to leave before grief needed someone easy to hold, before a child's fever became her name. Then Samuel's hand slipped from his father's sleeve. His fingers, hot and weak, caught the handle of her nurse's bag. Not her wrist, not her dress. The bag. Evelyn looked down at the small hand curled around cracked leather. He was not old enough to know what that bag had cost her. He only knew there might be help inside. For the first time that morning, the thing that marked her as dangerous had become the thing a child would not release. She eased the handle from his fingers and slid the bag over her arm. "I ride in the back," she said. "Keep him facing the shade. If he vomits, turn him on his side. If he shakes, do not hold him down." Gideon nodded once. Abel Finch opened the gate to the wagon yard. Behind them, Dr. Creel's name passed from mouth to mouth like a warning. Gideon's wagon waited in the red dust, and a small girl stood on the seat gripping the rail, a white handkerchief crushed in her fist. "Pa?" she asked. "He is coming home, Ellie," Gideon said. But Ellie was looking at Evelyn's bag. Her face went pale with the private terror of someone who had seen a bag carried into a sick room before and never seen the house return to what it was. Evelyn climbed into the wagon without asking for welcome. Samuel lay between folded feed sacks, his skin too hot beneath her fingers. No one on the platform stopped them. They only watched Gideon drive out of Mercy Junction with a fevered son, a frightened daughter, and the woman they had already decided was bad luck. Evelyn kept one hand on the bag and one hand near Samuel's pulse. The station fell behind them. The story she had tried to leave behind rode with her. The Vale Ranch did not look broken from the road. It sat beyond a split-rail fence and a line of cottonwoods, low against yellow grass. From a distance, the place looked like any ranch that had survived more winters than it cared to count. Then the wagon rolled into the yard, and Evelyn saw what grief had done where weather could not reach. One side of the porch had been swept clean, but the other held a child's broken sled, 2 empty milk pails, and a woman's old watering can rusting at the spout. The kitchen window was shut tight, though the day had turned warm, and a strip of black cloth, faded almost gray, hung from a nail near the frame. No one had taken it down. Gideon climbed from the wagon with Samuel in his arms. "Ellie," he said softly, "open the door." The little girl did not move. She stood on the wagon seat, clutching her white handkerchief, staring at Evelyn's nurse's bag as if the brass clasp might open by itself. Evelyn understood before anyone explained. A bag like hers had entered this house before. Sickness taught children the shape of objects. A bottle, a cloth, a basin, a chair pulled near a bed, a closed door. "Ellie," Gideon said again. The child scrambled down, but she opened only the outer door. She would not cross the threshold ahead of them. Evelyn followed Gideon into a kitchen that smelled of ash, old coffee, and something sour beneath the floorboards. Not filth. Neglect. The kind made by a house where nobody had enough heart left to finish ordinary things. On the table, a school slate lay beside a cup of dried wildflowers. The flowers had been there too long, their stems brittle, their ribbon faded blue. "My wife's," Gideon said. It was the first thing he had offered that was not instruction. Evelyn nodded once and did not touch them. "Where's his room?" Gideon carried Samuel down a narrow hall. Ellie stayed in the kitchen doorway, one hand pressed against the frame. The sick room had a child's wooden horse on the windowsill and a quilt folded at the foot of the bed. But the shutters were latched. The curtains were drawn. The air had gone stale and warm, heavy with fever breath and lamp smoke. Evelyn set her bag on the chair. Ellie made a small sound. Evelyn looked back. "I can move it." Ellie shook her head, but her eyes filled. Gideon lowered Samuel to the bed. "She thinks bags leave." The words came rough. Evelyn's hand stilled on the clasp. She saw one packed before her mother died. Gideon drew the quilt away from Samuel's chest. "Miriam kept a carpetbag near the bed the last week. Said if the doctor in Abilene would see her, she might come home well. She never made the trip." Ellie disappeared from the doorway. The empty place she left seemed louder than if she had cried. Evelyn opened her bag slowly. Cloth first. Scissors next. A small brown bottle of carbolic. No secrets. No suddenness. "I need boiled water," she said. "Not from the pitcher. Fresh from the pump if the pump is clean." Gideon looked toward the washstand. A blue pitcher sat there, half full. Beside it stood a dark bottle with a paper label and Dr. Creel's neat signature. Evelyn did not touch the bottle yet. "How many spoonfuls?" "2 last night," Gideon said. "1 before dawn. Did the fever rise after?" His eyes came back to her. That was the first change in him. Until then, he had listened because Samuel needed help. Now he listened because the question had found something he had not wanted to name. "Yes." Evelyn crossed to the window and pushed at the latch. Paint had sealed the lower frame. "This room needs air. Doctor said drafts take strength. Bad air takes more." For a moment, she thought he might defend the doctor. Instead, Gideon pulled his pocket knife and worked the blade under the painted seam. The old wood gave with a dry crack. Fresh air entered like a thing remembered. Samuel stirred. His lashes trembled, but he did not wake. Evelyn dampened a cloth from her canteen and laid it behind his neck. She checked his pulse, then his tongue, then the heat at his ears. The bitter smell was still there. Behind her, something clicked softly. Ellie had returned, holding the faded blue ribbon from the dead flowers on the kitchen table. "You fix him?" she whispered. Evelyn did not say yes. Children deserved hope, but not lies. "I will work hard," she said. Ellie looked at the nurse's bag. Then, with careful bravery, she placed the blue ribbon beside it. "So it knows this is our house," she said. Gideon turned away, but not before Evelyn saw his face break. Outside, the windmill groaned. Somewhere behind the barn, water knocked in a trough with a hollow, uneven sound. Evelyn looked from the pitcher to the window, then toward the yard. "Where does this room's water come from?" "The pump," Gideon said. "Mostly." "Mostly?" His eyes shifted toward the old stone lip near the windmill. "The cistern when the pump runs low." Evelyn picked up the blue pitcher and smelled the water again. Beneath the flatness of standing water was a thin metallic edge. She did not accuse, not yet. "Mr. Vale," she said, keeping her voice low. "I need the window kept open. Every cloth boiled, and no more of Dr. Dashensialsation 05 Lia loser daughter and 7. Creel's tonic until I understand what is making your son burn." Gideon looked at the dark bottle. Then he looked through the open window toward the old cistern, and the fear in his face changed shape. It was no longer only fear for Samuel. It was memory. By late afternoon, the Vale kitchen had become a sick room without calling itself one. Water boiled on the stove until steam fogged the window. Strips of linen hung from a chair back. Gideon carried buckets from the pump, emptied them, and carried more when Evelyn said the first water smelled wrong. He did not argue. He did not ask whether Dr. Creel would approve. He only listened, jaw tight, sleeves wet to the elbow. That made Evelyn more careful, not less. Trust from a desperate father could be as dangerous as blame from a town. She washed Samuel's face, changed the cloth behind his neck, and counted the spaces between his breaths. The boy's fever ran hot, then strange. It rose after rest, not after chills. His tongue stayed dry no matter how little water she gave him. And when she opened Dr. Creel's tonic and held it near the lamplight, a cloudy thread moved inside the brown glass. Gideon saw her face. "What is it?" "Maybe nothing." He did not accept that. Quiet men often heard the words people tried to hide inside other words. "Mrs. Hart." She set the bottle down. "I have seen tonic turn bitter when it is old, poorly mixed, or cut with something that should not be swallowed by a child." His hand closed around the back of a chair. "Creel gave that to Miriam." Evelyn wished he had not said it yet. Some truths were easier before they had names. Samuel stirred and coughed. Evelyn lifted him carefully, not enough to frighten him, only enough to ease the breath in his chest. Gideon stepped forward, then stopped when she raised one hand. "Talk to him," she said. "I do not know what to say. Say the work of the ranch. Things he knows." Gideon looked as if she had asked him to pray in a language he had forgotten. Then he bent close to the boy. "North Gate held this morning," he said, voice low. "Red cow kicked over the grain pan again. Ellie fed the barn cat too much cream. You will have to scold her when you wake." Samuel's breathing loosened. "Not much. Enough." From the doorway, Ellie listened with both hands around the blue ribbon. She did not enter, but she did not run either. Evelyn changed the cloth again. "Good. Keep his mind in the world." Gideon looked at her then, not like a man looking at a curse, and not even like a man looking at help. He looked at her as if she had shown him a door in his own house he had never known how to open. Boots sounded on the porch before anyone knocked. Ellie vanished. Gideon crossed the kitchen, but Dr. Amos Creel had already stepped through with his black case in hand and Mrs. Hattie Pike behind him, bonnet strings tied tight beneath her chin. The doctor's eyes went first to Samuel, then to the open window, then to the tonic bottle on the table. "I hear my instructions were changed." Evelyn folded the damp cloth once, very neatly. "The room needed air. Drafts are dangerous in fever. So is bad air." Mrs. Pike made a small sound. "Mr. Vale, this is exactly the kind of boldness we feared." Gideon did not move from the doorway. "My son is breathing easier." Dr. Creel smiled without warmth. "Fever often deceives a parent before it takes a child." The word struck the room like a hand across the mouth. Evelyn saw Gideon's face pale. She saw Ellie's shadow shrink behind the pantry door. And she understood then that Creel knew where to press. He had treated this house before. He knew the shape of its guilt. The doctor reached for the tonic. Evelyn moved first. She did not snatch it. She placed her hand over the bottle and kept her voice level. I need to know where you purchased this. His smile thinned. You need? Yes. And what standing do you have to ask? Before Evelyn could answer, Samuel whispered from the bed. Burns. Everyone turned. His eyes were not open, but his mouth trembled around the word. Burns. He breathed again. After. Gideon was beside him in 2 steps. After what, son? Samuel swallowed weakly. Spoon. The kitchen went silent except for the stove. Evelyn looked at the tonic beneath her hand. The cloudy thread inside the glass drifted slowly, like something trying to hide. Dr. Creel recovered first. Children speak nonsense in fever. Sometimes, Evelyn said. Sometimes they speak the one thing adults missed. Mrs. Pike looked uncertain for the first time. Gideon lifted his head. No more tonic. You would risk your boy on the judgment of a woman who left Granger Bend under accusation? Evelyn felt the old room rise around her. The old bed, the old doctor, the old child who had not lived long enough to be believed. Her hand wanted to shake. She would not let it. I left because no one would test the medicine, she said. Not because I stopped asking. A gust came through the open window and stirred the blue ribbon in Ellie's hands. Samuel's fever did not break that hour. Mercy did not arrive all at once. But by sundown, after boiled water, clean cloth, fresh air, and no more brown tonic, the boy's breathing settled into a rhythm that no longer sounded like a fight. Gideon stood over the washstand, staring at the pitcher Evelyn had refused to use. What else do you need? He asked. Evelyn looked toward the yard, where the old cistern sat half hidden beyond the windmill. A lantern, she said. And the bucket you use when the pump runs low. Gideon did not ask why. That was when she knew he believed her enough to be afraid. The lantern showed Gideon what the daylight had forgiven. At the old cistern, the water looked still and harmless beneath the stone lip. A thin skin of dust floated near the edge. The bucket rope was stiff with age, and when Gideon hauled it up, the iron handle scraped the stone with a sound that made the yard feel too awake. Evelyn held the lantern low. Do not pour it out yet. Gideon stopped. She dipped a clean strip of cloth into the bucket, then lifted it to the light. The cloth did not change color enough for certainty, but the smell came first, flat water, old metal, and something sour beneath it. Behind them, Samuel coughed from the open bedroom window. Gideon turned at once. He needs me. He needs you calm, Evelyn said. And he needs this water kept away from him. That was the first time Gideon looked truly angry. Not at her. At the bucket. At the cistern. At every ordinary thing in his yard that might have sat there quietly hurting his son. Was Miriam drinking from this? He asked. Evelyn did not answer too quickly. Mercy could become cruelty when it pretended to know more than it did. I do not know, she said, but I know Samuel should not. Inside, Ellie stood in the hall with bare feet and the blue ribbon clenched in one hand. She had been told to stay in the kitchen, which meant she had come as far as obedience allowed. Is the water bad? She whispered. Gideon opened his mouth, but Evelyn knelt before the child. We are going to use the pump water after I test it. Your father is going to cover the cistern until we know more. Ellie looked past her to the room where Samuel lay. Mama drank from the blue pitcher. The words did not land loudly. They landed deeply. Gideon went still. Evelyn saw a door open in his face. One he had spent 2 years holding shut. Before he could step through it, Samuel called from the bed. Pa? Gideon went to him. But Samuel's fever-bright eyes moved beyond his father. Bag lady? Evelyn's breath caught. Gideon glanced back, almost apologizing for the child's words. But Samuel was not afraid. He lifted 2 fingers, weakly pointing toward the chair where her nurse's bag sat with the blue ribbon beside it. Don't let her put it away, he whispered. Evelyn crossed to the bed. I only put it away when the work is done. Samuel frowned as if that answer was not enough. Then don't be done. It was such a child's command that no grown person in the room knew how to answer it. Ellie slipped past Gideon and climbed onto the foot of the bed. She did not ask permission. Her eyes stayed on Evelyn while one small hand reached into the pocket of her dress and pulled out a white handkerchief, folded into a square and worn soft at the corners. Gideon's voice changed. Ellie, it was Mama's. The child said. I know. Ellie held it out to Evelyn. If your bag has this, it won't leave like hers did. Evelyn could have refused many things: charity, pity, a room, a plate, a kind word given too late. She could not refuse a child trying to tie a person to a house with the only cloth she trusted. She opened the bag. Ellie placed the handkerchief inside with both hands. Then Samuel, with great effort, pushed the blue ribbon after it. "For knowing," he said. "Knowing what?" Gideon asked softly. Samuel's eyes closed, but his voice came clearer than it had all day. "She came when people were mean." No sermon could have silenced the room more completely. Out in the yard, a wagon creaked near the gate. Gideon turned. Through the open window, they saw Mrs. Hattie Pike's church wagon pause at the road. She did not come in. She looked toward the lit sick room, then toward the covered cistern, and drove on toward town. Evelyn knew what that meant. By morning, Mercy Junction would not be whispering about a fever. It would be deciding whether a woman with no license had taken over a widower's house. Gideon knew it too. He crossed to the window and lowered the lantern, not hiding the light, only steadying it. "You should sleep," he told Evelyn. "I will sit until his fever drops. You have been sitting since noon. So has fear." He looked at her then, and something in the room shifted. It was not love yet. It was not even trust fully spoken. It was the first shape of a place being made. Samuel's hand found the edge of her sleeve before he slept again. Ellie curled beside the footboard, refusing to leave while the bag stayed open. Gideon stood between the window and the door, watching the road Mrs. Pike had taken back to town. By dawn, the children had chosen Evelyn in the only way children knew how. They gave her what they were afraid to lose. And outside the ranch, the town was beginning to decide what price Gideon would pay for letting them. Mourning did not cure Samuel, but it changed the sound of the house. His breathing no longer scraped through the room. The fever still held him, but it held him with tired fingers now, not iron ones. Evelyn sat beside the bed with her sleeves rolled and her hair coming loose at the neck. She had not slept, and every time Gideon stepped into the doorway, he looked as if he had been struck by the same fact. She was still there. He did not thank her again. Thanks would have been too small. Instead, he worked. He covered the old cistern before breakfast. He hauled pump water, split kindling, cleaned the washstand, and burned the cloth Samuel had sweated through. When Evelyn asked for vinegar, he found it. When she asked for more light, he trimmed the lamp. When Ellie refused to eat unless she could see the nurse's bag, Gideon moved a chair into the hall so the child could sit close without crowding the sick room. No speech could have told Evelyn more plainly that he was making room for her work. Still, making room was not the same as asking her to stay. By noon, Mrs. Bell from the boarding house arrived with a covered basket and a face full of worry she tried to hide behind sternness. "I heard the boy was poorly," she said. Her eyes moved to Evelyn, then away. "And I heard other things too." Evelyn reached for her shawl. "If my being here brings trouble," Gideon set a kettle down harder than necessary. "She is working," he said. Mrs. Bell blinked at him. That was all he said, but it was enough to make the boarding house woman lower her basket onto the table. "There is broth in there," she muttered, "and bread that did not burn." After she left, Gideon took a hammer from the pantry shelf and went to the wall beside the kitchen door. Evelyn watched him drive a new peg into the wood, smooth it with his thumb, then step back. "What is that for?" she asked. He did not look at her. "Your bag should not sit on the floor." The words reached a place in her that praise would not have touched. Her nurse's bag had been kicked aside in boarding houses, searched by suspicious doctors, and pointed at on train platforms. No one had ever given it a place on a wall. Evelyn turned away before her face could betray her. That evening, Samuel woke enough to take broth from a spoon. Ellie climbed onto the chair in the hall and whispered every ranch report Gideon had taught her. The barn cat had kittens, the red cow was rude, and the north gate still held. Samuel almost smiled. Gideon saw it and went very still. Later, when the children slept, he brought the ranch ledger to the kitchen table. He opened it not like a man seeking numbers, but like one opening a grave. "Miriam kept accounts better than I did," he said. Evelyn sat across from him, the lamp between them. His fingers turned pages past feed orders. Salt blocks, flour, nails, tonic. He stopped. There it was in Miriam's careful hand. Creel's fever tonic, 2 bottles. Paid cash. Supplier. Marlowe and Sons, Granger Bend. The name made the room shrink around Evelyn. Gideon read it once. Then again. "Marlowe," he said. Evelyn folded her hands in her lap. That was the doctor who blamed me. Gideon looked toward the hall where Samuel slept. And Creel buys from him, or bought from the same place. You told them? In Granger Bend? She gave a small, tired nod. I told anyone who would stand still long enough. They said grief had made me proud. They said a nurse should not accuse a doctor. Outside, cattle shifted beyond the dark yard. A lantern swung from the porch beam, throwing one stripe of light across the floor. Gideon's voice fell. Miriam got worse after the second bottle. Evelyn did not answer. Silence was the only honest mercy left. He closed the ledger, but his hand stayed on top of it. I let him pour it into her. You were trying to save your wife. I was trying to be obedient to the man everyone told me knew best. That was the first time Gideon Vale let his grief stand in the room without armor. Not anger, not command. Just a widower at a table, staring at the shape of a mistake that might not have been his and still felt like his. Evelyn wanted to reach across the lamp. She did not. A wagon rolled past the ranch road, slow enough to be seen, slow enough to be meant. Mrs. Pike's bonnet was visible beneath the moonlight. Beside her sat Dr. Creel, his black case on his knees. They will come tomorrow, Evelyn said. Let them. You may lose more than peace. I lost peace 2 years ago. His eyes met hers then, and for one breath, Evelyn believed he might say the thing her heart had already begun to fear. Stay. Instead, he looked away and lifted the ledger. I need to know how far this goes. The hope inside her folded itself closed. Of course, he needed truth. He needed records. He needed his son alive, and his wife's death explained. He did not need her beyond that. In the hall, Ellie's small hand slipped from the chair and rested against the nurse's bag hanging on the new peg. Evelyn looked at it there, no longer on the floor, not yet truly belonging to the house. By morning, Gideon would have to choose whether to defend the woman who had brought danger to his door. And Evelyn had already begun preparing herself for the answer she had learned to expect. The next morning, Dr. Creel did not come alone. He arrived in Mrs. Pike's church wagon, black case polished, collar clean, a folded paper tucked inside his coat like a weapon he preferred not to show too soon. Mrs. Pike climbed down behind him carrying a basket that did not smell of food. It smelled of judgment wrapped in cloth. Gideon met them on the porch. Samuel is sleeping, he said. Then we will speak softly, Dr. Creel replied, already stepping toward the door. Gideon did not move. Inside, Evelyn stood in the kitchen with Samuel's cup in her hand. Ellie sat at the table, both palms flat near the nurse's bag, which hung from its new peg as if the child could keep it there by guarding the air around it. Mrs. Pike looked past Gideon and saw the bag. So it is true. What is true? Gideon asked. That a woman with accusation behind her has been given charge of your children. Evelyn set the cup down before her hand could shake. Dr. Creel unfolded the paper. This is not a church matter only. I have a duty to report unsafe medical practice when children are involved. Gideon took the paper. My boy is better. For now, he is breathing. Breathing is not proof of proper care. Evelyn stepped into the doorway. No, but a child worsening after each spoon of tonic is proof enough to stop giving it. Creel's eyes sharpened. You are eager to blame medicine you do not understand. I understand what I smelled. You smelled fear and called it knowledge. The words were meant to make her small. They had been used before by better-dressed men in darker rooms. This time, Evelyn did not lower her eyes. In Granger Bend, she said, a boy was given tonic from Marlowe & Sons. His fever climbed after each dose. His mouth burned. His breathing changed. I asked Dr. Marlowe to stop. I asked him to test the bottle, open the window, and boil the water. Mrs. Pike's expression flickered. And then the boy died. The porch went still. Dr. Creel gave a sad little nod, as if she had supplied the rope for her own hanging. There, you hear it from her mouth. Evelyn looked at Mrs. Pike, not at him. He died after they ignored me. Gideon finally read the notice. His face did not change, but his thumb pressed hard enough to crease the county stamp. What does it say? Evelyn asked. His answer came slowly. If Samuel remains under unlicensed care, the household may be inspected. If the doctor finds neglect, the child can be removed for treatment. Ellie made a thin sound. Gideon crushed the notice in his fist. No one is taking my son. No one wants to, Mrs. Pike said quickly. Mr. Vale, you know I respected Miriam, but grief makes a house vulnerable. A widower cannot see every danger under his own roof. Evelyn heard the truth inside the cruelty. Mrs. Pike was afraid, not only of Evelyn, of another dead child, of another closed coffin, of another woman blamed because no one had acted soon enough. Dr. Creel turned that fear into authority. Remove Mrs. Hart from the sick room. Allow me to resume care, and there will be no county involvement. Gideon's voice dropped. With the same tonic? With proper dosage? With the same supplier as Marlowe and Sons? Creel's face tightened for the first time. The rancher stepped down from the porch. My ledger says you bought from them. Many physicians use the same suppliers. My wife used your tonic. Your wife was gravely ill before I arrived. She worsened after the second bottle. Mrs. Pike looked from one man to the other, no longer certain where righteousness stood. Creel closed his case with a hard click. Be careful, Mr. Vale. A grieving man looking for blame can ruin what little steadiness his children have left. Then he drew the second blade. There is also your cattle contract. Mr. Dorn at the stock office asked whether Vale Ranch is under health concern. I told him I hoped not. Gideon went very still. Evelyn understood. A ranch could survive gossip. It could not easily survive a buyer stepping away. You would do that? Gideon asked. I would protect the community. No, Evelyn said quietly. You would protect yourself. Creel looked at her with all the politeness gone. And you would hide behind a sick child to repair a name you ruined elsewhere. Ellie slid from her chair and ran to Gideon, pressing her face against his side. Samuel coughed from the bedroom, weak but waking. The sound made Evelyn's decision begin before she wanted it. If she stayed, Gideon could lose his contract. Samuel could be threatened with removal. Ellie could hear adults argue over whether the woman she trusted was poison. The Vale children had already lost one woman to a sick room. Evelyn would not become the reason they lost the house, too. Gideon handed the notice back without signing anything. Leave my porch, he said. Creel put on his hat. By tomorrow, Mr. Vale, choose wisely. When the wagon rolled away, dust swallowed its wheels, but not its threat. Gideon turned to Evelyn, anger and fear both alive in his face. We fight this. Evelyn looked past him to the nurse's bag on the wall, with Miriam's handkerchief folded inside. For the first time since Mercy Junction, the bag looked less like a burden than a promise she might have no right to keep. No, she said softly, though Gideon had not yet asked the question. By sunset, she would begin folding what little she owned, because leaving was the only way she knew to love a family without letting the world punish them for choosing her. Evelyn packed after the children slept. There was not much to gather. A spare dress folded thin from too many washings, a comb with 2 broken teeth, a roll of linen. The few coins Mr. Lyle had not stolen because they had been sewn into her hem. She placed each thing into the nurse's bag carefully, working around Miriam's handkerchief and Samuel's blue ribbon as if those small gifts might bruise. The bag looked wrong with leaving inside it. From the kitchen, she heard Gideon moving. Once, his boots crossed the porch. Once, the barn door opened. Once, a horse snorted near the hitching rail. He had said they would fight. But after Dr. Creel left, he had become all silence and motion. That frightened her more than anger would have. A man could promise anything while threat was still outside the gate. The true answer came afterward, when he counted the price. Evelyn understood counting. She left a note beneath the cup on the kitchen table. Do not let Samuel drink from the cistern. Boil the pump water until the test is finished. Keep the window open. Burn the old tonic. She did not write goodbye. The word would have asked for too much. In the hall, Ellie slept curled in the chair beneath the nurse's bag peg, as if guarding an empty hook could keep the world obedient. Evelyn knelt and brushed one loose strand of hair from the child's cheek. Ellie woke enough to whisper, Is the bag going to the station? Evelyn closed her eyes. Yes. Are you inside it? No, sweetheart. Then why does it take you? Because people are kinder to a house after trouble leaves it, Evelyn thought. But she only said, because your father needs peace. Ellie frowned, not understanding peace as something that could require absence. Children knew peace as a person staying when the room got dark. From the bedroom, Samuel stirred. Evelyn rose too quickly, but the boy was already awake, watching her through the dim. You said you put it away when the work was done, he whispered. His voice was still rough, but alive, painfully alive. The worst of the fever is past. That is not done. She stepped into the room. Your father knows what to do now. Samuel's eyes moved to her bag. Pa knows cattle. You know burning. It was a strange child's sentence, but she understood. Burning throat, burning fever, burning shame. Things Samuel had not been able to name until someone listened. He pushed at the blanket, weakly determined, and pointed toward the floor near his bed. There sat his small boots. I put them there, he said, for mourning. You will need them when you are stronger. No. He swallowed. For you to trip over. So you remember somebody lives here. Evelyn had survived accusation, hunger, stolen money, and the kind of looks that stripped a woman of her name. A child's boots nearly broke her. She set them neatly beside the bed. I will remember. Before dawn, she carried the bag from the hook. The pegs stayed in the wall, bare and accusing. Outside, the eastern sky was only beginning to pale. Frost silvered the pump handle. Gideon's saddle horse was gone from the rail, and for one aching second Evelyn thought he had left first. Then she saw fresh wagon tracks cutting toward the lower road, away from town. Not the station road. The telegraph road. She did not let herself hope. Hope had a way of making women foolish at the exact moment they needed sense. Mrs. Bell's hired boy drove her toward Mercy Junction in a buckboard that smelled of flour sacks. The boarding house woman had not asked questions when Evelyn appeared at her back door. She had only tightened her mouth and said, "A woman leaving before breakfast is usually doing it for someone else." At the station, Abel Finch looked up from the telegraph desk and seemed older than he had 3 days before. "Mrs. Hart, I need the first westbound." His eyes dropped to the bag. Mr. Vale was here. Her hand tightened on the handle. "When?" "Before sunup." "Sent wire to Granger Bend." Paid double for a fast reply. Evelyn's heart gave one foolish leap before she struck it down. "He is looking into the tonic." "He was looking into you." "That was worse." "Better." "Impossible." The platform outside waited in the same red dust that had held her humiliation. Only this time, she had come by choice. That was what she told herself as she bought a one-way ticket with money sewn for emergencies. When she stepped outside, the rails were already humming faintly. A train was coming. Evelyn stood near the post, where Mercy Junction had first turned away from her, and held the nurse's bag in both hands. Inside were a dead woman's handkerchief, a sick boy's ribbon, and enough leaving to fill a lifetime. Behind the wall, the telegraph bell began to ring. Abel's chair scraped hard against the floor. Evelyn did not turn at first. If the message cleared her name, it had come too late to spare the children from the price of keeping her. If it condemned her, then she was already where condemned women belonged. On the platform, the train whistle called from the bend, and down the road from Vale Ranch, wagon wheels struck dust at a speed no careful man would choose unless he was done being careful. The wagon reached Mercy Junction before the train did. Samuel sat beside Gideon, pale but awake, his small boots on his feet. Ellie stood by the rail, gripping the blue ribbon from the nurse's bag. The platform turned toward them. So did Dr. Creel. He stood near the ticket window with Mr. Dorn from the stock office and 2 church women behind Mrs. Pike. The cattle contract showed from Dorn's coat pocket. Gideon stepped down with dust on his boots and a telegram in his hand. "Mrs. Hart," he said. "Not Evelyn. Not yet." Before this crowd, he gave her the dignity they had tried to take first. The train whistle cried from the bend. "You should take your children home," Evelyn said. Samuel pushed himself upright. "I came." The 2 words were weak. They carried farther than a shout. Dr. Creel walked forward. "Mr. Vale, this is not the place to confuse a sick child with adult matters." Gideon looked at Abel Finch. "Read it." The station master unfolded the telegram. "From Granger Bend," Abel said. "Records confirm Evelyn Hart filed complaint against Marlowe and Sons Fever Tonic after death of minor patient. Complaint dismissed by attending physician. 2 later complaints filed regarding same batch. Supplier under county review. Hart's statement was consistent with symptoms later reported." The platform went quiet in a new way. Not the silence of people refusing help. The silence of people realizing they had helped bury the wrong truth. Dr. Creel's face hardened. "A telegram is not a trial." "No," Gideon said. "But it is enough to stop calling her a liar on my land." Mr. Dorn cleared his throat. "Gideon, the stock office cannot be tied to health scandal. If Vale Ranch remains under inspection, then take your contract." Gideon gave the sealed paper back to him. "I will not sell cattle to a man who thinks a father's fear can be bought cheaper than truth. That contract keeps your winter steady." My winter is not steadied by handing my son back to the same bottle that burned his throat. Samuel reached down from the wagon. In his hand was Evelyn's nurse's bag, taken from the empty peg before Gideon left the ranch. It was not on the station boards now. It was not at her feet like a thing abandoned. It was in the hands of the child she had nearly left to protect. Samuel held it out. "You forgot the work," he said. Evelyn could not move. Ellie climbed down next and pressed the blue ribbon into Evelyn's palm. "You said the worst fever was past," Ellie said. "Not all of it." Mrs. Pike covered her mouth. Evelyn saw the woman's eyes fill, not with easy apology, but with something more useful, uncertainty deep enough to become humility. Dr. Creel stepped between them. "This display is reckless. That woman is still unlicensed." Gideon finally faced him fully. "She did not bring sickness to my house," he said. "She brought my son back from it." The words moved through Mercy Junction like wind through dry grass. "She opened windows you told me to shut. She stopped tonic you told me to pour. She found water I had let my children drink because I trusted the wrong men to know more than the woman who was watching." Creel's jaw clenched. "You are grieving your wife." "Yes," Gideon said. "And I will grieve her honest now." That did what anger could not. Mrs. Pike stepped down from the platform edge. "Dr. Creel, the cistern should be tested." He turned on her. "Hattie, and the tonic bottles," she said, quieter but firmer. "If children are the reason, then children are the reason for all of it." The train rolled into view, brakes screaming, smoke blowing across the platform where Evelyn had been left, with nothing but a name people feared. The conductor called for boarding. Evelyn looked at the open passenger door. It would still take her west. It would still give Mercy Junction what it had wanted 3 days ago: her disappearance. Then Gideon stepped down from the wagon with the nurse's bag in both hands. He did not seize her hand. He did not make a show of possession. He stopped in front of her and held out the bag like a choice. "I cannot promise they will be kind," he said. "I cannot promise Creel will fold easy, or the county will leave us be, or winter will come gentle after I threw away a contract." His voice lowered. "I can promise there is a peg by my kitchen door with your measure in the wood. If you want it, it is yours." Evelyn looked at Samuel, at Ellie, at Mrs. Bell wiping her eyes with her apron, at Mrs. Pike standing apart from Dr. Creel for the first time. Then she looked at the bag. All her life lately had been packed into leaving. For once, someone had carried it back to her as a way home. She took the handle. The conductor called again. Evelyn did not board. Gideon turned to the crowd, and the quiet rancher who had spent years saving words finally used them where they cost him most. "Evelyn Hart belongs at Vale Ranch," he said. "Not because I pity her, not because my children begged, because she told the truth when it cost her, and because my house is alive today from the work of her hands." Samuel leaned against his father's side. Ellie slipped her fingers into Evelyn's free hand. The train left Mercy Junction without her. This time, the station watched a woman stay because a broken family had become brave enough to choose her first. Winter did not turn gentle because Evelyn Hart stayed. The cattle contract was gone. The county still came. Men with clipboards and cold hands tested the old cistern, the pump water, and every brown bottle Dr. Creel had left behind. They did not speak apologies while they worked. Mercy Junction was not the kind of town that changed itself in one afternoon. But it began. Mrs. Pike arrived 3 days after the station with 2 clean sheets and no speech prepared. She stood in the Vale kitchen, looked once at Evelyn, then at Samuel eating broth at the table. "I brought these for the sick room," she said. Evelyn accepted them. That was enough for that day. The cistern was sealed before the first hard frost. Gideon and 2 ranch hands dug a new line from the pump and burned the old bucket rope behind the barn. Samuel watched from the porch, wrapped in a quilt, giving orders until Ellie told him sick boys were not bosses. He said he was not sick anymore. Nobody argued. Dr. Creel stopped coming to the ranch. His name still held weight in town, but not the same kind. The tonic bottles went east with the county papers, and Abel Finch sent 2 more telegrams before Christmas. Evelyn did not ask what they said. She had learned that truth, once opened, had its own road to travel. At Vale Ranch, the house changed in smaller ways. The sickroom window stayed easy to open. The blue pitcher was moved to the shelf above the stove, not thrown away, but never used for drinking again. Miriam's dried flowers remained on the table until Ellie asked Evelyn to help press them into a book. "She was here before you," Ellie said. "Yes," Evelyn answered. "Now you are here too." No sermon had ever done better. Gideon built no grand room for Evelyn. He made no loud promise in front of a preacher. One morning, he simply added a second hook beside the kitchen door. The first held her nurse's bag. The second held her shawl. When she saw it, she looked at him. He was mending a latch that had not needed mending. "Wind catches it," he said. "There is no wind today." "There will be." That was how Gideon Vale loved at first, by preparing a place before the weather arrived. On the last day of the year, Evelyn found her old train ticket still folded inside her bag, the westbound ticket, the one meant for leaving. She carried it to the ranch ledger and opened to a clean page after the winter accounts. Beneath Miriam's careful numbers and Gideon's rougher hand, Evelyn placed the ticket flat and pressed it between the pages. Then she wrote one line beside it. "The day I did not go." At supper, Samuel's boot sat beneath his chair, muddy from real chores again. Ellie's ribbon was tied around the handle of the nurse's bag. Miriam's handkerchief stayed folded inside it, not as a ghost, but as a blessing passed from one woman's care to another, and the bag itself no longer waited at anyone's feet. It hung beside the kitchen door of Vale Ranch, close enough for Evelyn to reach if someone needed healing, high enough for every visitor to see that it had a place. The world had left her at a station with nowhere to go. The Vale house had answered by giving her hands a home.